Good day, everyone, and welcome to SGS Marine Services podcast, The Cruise Mess Deck, a place where you can hear the latest news, developments, and happenings in the maritime world of trade and cruise vessels. I'm Bob Goldring, and I'm going to be your navigator today. Join us now as we get underway for a journey through the Panama Canal. It's the year 1909. We're standing on the weather deck of the Boston Steamship Company's vessel SS Shawmut. It's transiting global routes for passenger and freight service. Her current position is rounding Cape Horn off the southern tip of South America, just several hundred miles from the Antarctic Peninsula. It's a long, arduous journey. Heavy seas and inhospitable waters. Little did the crew and officers know, in just 4 years' time, this voyage would be cut in half by something that is considered the eighth wonder of the world, the Panama Canal. This vessel, SS Shawmut, would be renamed the SS Ancon, and would be the first vessel to transit the newly constructed canal on August 15th, 1914. Well, it's past 1914 by precisely 109 years since the official opening of the canal, and it's time to welcome and introduce our guests who have gathered for this podcast. We have 3 experts on our panel today. Starting off, Mr. Fernando Young, who is the laboratory manager for SGS Panama. As a chemist, he has had a wonderful career in energy, oil, and gas industries, serving as an industry representative on multiple Panamanian national advisory committees. Fernando, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Bob. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Alexis Rodriguez, who is the regional head of energy transition in Latin America for the Maersk shipping line. As well, he has been a professor of operations and energy efficiency and an environmental protection specialist for the Panama Canal Authority. And Alexis, greetings. Happy you could join us as well.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And rounding up our panel of experts is Dr. Lisa Drake, who is SGS Marine Manager for the Americas, which is part of the SGS network that provides environmental sampling and analysis to ship owners in more than 300 ports around the world. Wow, 300 ports. That's a lot of ports, Lisa. She has a background in oceanography. She has served as technical advisor to delegations to the International Maritime Organization, which is the United Nations agency for the safety and security of shipping. And Lisa, ahoy and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us as well.
Hello. So glad to be here with all of you.
A big welcome to our listeners around the globe. Thank you so much for tuning in to SGS's The Cruise Mess Deck. Please grab a hot cup of coffee. I think it's been freshly brewed, and I think we're ready to get underway and start another great conversation. So let's get started today. The Panama Canal has a huge history. Can anyone give us a bit of history about the Panama Canal?
I can do that, Bob.
Oh, great. Thanks, Lisa.
So the idea of having a canal route in Panama dates clear back to 1534, when King Charles V of Spain ordered the first studies. The idea lasted until 1880, when France worked for 20 years on the construction of the Panama Canal, but disease and financial problems stopped that effort. Then in 1903, the United States took over and completed it 10 years later. It's worth noting that before the Panama Canal existed, it took 15 days to sail around South America through the Strait of Magellan and Cape Horn.
Oh, that's a big time saver. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it dates back to 1534 in King Charles. Wow, it's incredible. Fernando, do you have maybe any remembrance about the canal, or maybe people you know have been involved in the development of it?
Oh, yes, Bob. I am a descendant of immigrants who were part of
really?
the,
Wow.
yes,
Okay.
who were part of the labor force used to build the canal. My grandfather, uncles, and my father has worked on the Panama Canal. My father has 30 years of active service in Panama Canal.
Wow. So you must have some stories, I'm sure. That's amazing. Alexis, do you have anything you would like to add about the history or any interesting facts?
Well, yes, at least we need to notice that the importance of the canal as a strategic location for global trade has positioned us as a center of the world, and also give us the opportunity to connect different routes and also promote the commerce here in Panama.
And I'm sure there's a lot of commerce. It's an amazing engineering feat. What was the most recent work done on the canal for improvements?
Yes, this Panamanians decided to proceed with the canal expansion, and that is one of the recent work done in 2016. We voted through a referendum in 2007, and the expansion includes the creation of 2 new sets of locks to fit ships 3 times the size of the regular Panamax vessels, and also water-saving basins. That is taking into account, for example, the sustainability efforts to sustain the Panama Canal watershed. So that is a lot of improvement, not only from an engineering perspective, but also for a sustainable vision across.
Does anyone have any knowledge about statistics, like how many ships pass or amount of goods going through the canal?
Sure, I can chime in here. In 2022, more than 13,000 vessels passed through the Panama Canal, approximately 30 vessels per day, and they moved almost 300 million tons of cargo, which seems unimaginably large, right?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And the importance of the Panama Canal to the region and the world can't be overstated, in that it connects almost 2,000 ports.
That's so worldwide. Yeah, you look at that. It makes it almost the center of transportation for vessels, right, Lisa?
Certainly in this part of the world, exactly.
Yeah, 2,000 ports. Amazing. I want to try to turn our conversation to the topic of sustainability. As we know, sustainability has to be something that has to be universal, and it probably has to be a reciprocal effort for it to be successful. But can we do a basic question here? And I don't know, maybe Lisa, you would be good to answer this. What's sustainability in relationship to the shipping industry? What does it mean?
I'm happy to answer that. And first, maybe it's helpful to start talking about sustainability in general. And I'd say that at its core, it means actions taken to ensure that the future has a healthy economy, a healthy society, and a healthy environment. And thinking about that applied to shipping, I would say it means protecting and conserving biodiversity in marine ecosystems by reducing pollution and impacts such as oil and underwater noise. And this is working to ensure that the industry is viable in the future, for example, by reducing greenhouse gases to minimize the effects of climate change on the planet.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. That's a great kind of definition how it relates to shipping. Now, if we can get more into detail, how is sustainability reflected in the Panama Canal, which is important? Maybe Alexis, I'm guessing maybe you could take this one.
I think that I could answer it. Is one way to measure sustainability is, for example, the greenhouse gas emissions savings from using the Panama Canal in against another longer routes, for example, as part of the reduction of the global logistics emission and the end-to-end strategies from different stakeholders or transport modes, including the Panama Canal, that is considered a shortcut. We see, for example, favorable in reducing global GHG emissions. As a global logistic integrator, Maersk particularly looks at all routes that support our commitment to decarbonize logistics at a global scale and see an added value to any sustainability efforts undertaken by the Panama Canal.
Ah, okay. GHG is, can I assume that's greenhouse gases?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reason I mentioned the old word, because you mentioned GSG. Maybe someone that is listening and doesn't have the document in front, they will
Thank
get
you.
lost in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyone else want to add anything to that for sustainability?
Yes, Bob. I want to add some
Sure,
comments.
Fernando, please go ahead.
Yes, the Panama Canal is a referent in issues of preservation of water resources and quality of drinking water distributed to the Panamanian population. It's important to mention that the Panama Canal expansion project incorporate water safety standards, allow 3 times more cargo to pass through this route using 7% less water. In other words, 60% of water from each transit will be reused, helping to prevent the important access.
Okay, wow. What are some of the environmental standards a ship must follow or be aware of before and when they go through the canal? Is there anything like standards they have to do? Yeah.
Yes, Bob. Panama Canal maintains 2 programs called Environmental Premium Ranking and Green Connections, which reward canal customers with better toll rates and priority for booking dates for transit through the canal if the customer demonstrate an interest in caring for the environment and motivate others to implement new technologies and standards that help reduce greenhouse gas
So they
emissions.
they basically get a discount if they're promoting green shipping. Lisa, I see. Did you want to add something? I see your flag up there.
Yeah, I can chime in about ballast water. And if listeners aren't familiar with that idea, this is water that's loaded on ships to help them ride stably. And even when ships have cargo on board, they still use this water that's taken up in one location and released in another. And because the water contains living organisms that are taken up, plankton, fish, bacteria, all kinds of living organisms that are found in seawater. When the water's discharged in a new location, some of those critters can grow like weeds and be an environmental or an economic problem, a so-called invasive species. Mm-hmm. So to reduce the chances of this happening within the Panama Canal, the discharge of ballast water by ships is prohibited as they're transiting the canal. And we could have a whole separate podcast about the International Ballast Water Management Convention and the environmental technologies that ships are installing to prevent moving invasive species around the planet. But that's a little idea about what's happening in the canal.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. Hey, I was wondering also the scrubber systems that ships use to clean the exhaust, are they used through the Panama Canal, or is there any special rule on that? Does anyone know if they use
Yeah.
scrubbers? Yeah.
I can answer that
Sure.
one. So the discharge of these scrubbers is prohibited in the Panama Canal.
Ah, okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about SGS operating in the Panama Canal and in that area.
Sure, Bob. For more than 30 years, SES has been a strategic partner for the Panama Canal, providing inspectors to care the vessel to take samples for analysis, inspection of cargoes, and fuels volumes before, during, or after the vessel complete transit through the Panama Canal.
How many offices are in Panama that they can do testing at?
Yes, SES has at this moment 43 office distributed along of the Panama Canal. We have our office too close to the screws in the Atlantic side, one in the middle of the country, another one in the Pacific side. Okay.
Ah, okay. And do ships sometimes stop in, what is it, Gatun Lake? Is that correct, Fernando? Is like the middle of the canal, basically?
Yes, Gatun Lake is artificial lake built or construct for providing water for transit of the vessel in the canal. We have, at this moment, I am in the office too close to Gatun Lake.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I passed there once twice actually on a cruise ship going through the canal. And they went to a dock and we got off the ship and we had a great time touring Panama. So it's a beautiful country. I'm curious about environmental testing. What can SGS do to, say, help the ships meet environmental compliance standards when they're transiting the canal? And not only the canal, I understand SGS has offices worldwide.
I can answer that.
Please, Lisa. Yeah.
So, indeed, SGS is a huge company, and we have a global network of shipboard environmental testing labs around the world with more than 330 ports that are serviced. And in 2022, we opened a new marine laboratory in Panama. So that was really exciting. And this is to help ship owners be compliant with environmental requirements and sustainability requirements. For example, we sample ballast water, oil and bilge water, gray water, drinking water for the crew. And this new lab is on the Atlantic side of the country in Cologne.
Oh, great. And how convenient to ships. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Everyone passes through the Panama Canal. Maersk Shipping Lines is certainly a major player in the world. In fact, I go down the interstates in the United States and I see these cargo bins on trucks and it says Maersk on it. So it's kind of like Coca-Cola. You're advertising all over the world, especially in the U.S. Alexis, I will ask you, can you tell us about how many Maersk ships transit the canal every year?
Well, we I think that for more than 45 vessels are crossing per month, and we are talking more than 607 approximately. But also, it's not only the vessels that transit, we also have logistic operations in Panama.
Maersk being one of the leading shipping companies engaged in sustainability, what specifically is the company doing in Panama and the Latin America region for sustainability?
Decarbonizing logistics is our greatest responsibility. We have a net zero commitment by 2040, including near-term targets to lead the industry with green offerings across a broad range of our product portfolio by 2030, including to reduce 50% of the carbon intensity in ocean products with 25% percent of all cargo transport on green fuel.
Wow, that's fantastic. What about on land? Because I know Maersk must have many terminals and warehouses. Am I correct?
Yes, yes, of course. In the group, we also have terminals that are expect to have a 70% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and a minimum of 30% of cargo transport by air that will use sustainable aviation fuel. And in warehouse and depots, we'll have a minimum of 90% of green operation. And inland transport, we follow the industry leading green offerings by a target of 20% of movements by green offerings. The new targets aim to align Maersk with a 1.50 degrees pathway and the net zero criteria of the Science Based Targets Initiative.
Going back to samples for marine environmental samples in Panama.
Environmental samples have a range of parameters that are measured, and the ones that are most time sensitive are bacteria, and they have to be analyzed, or the beginning of the analysis must start within 8 hours of collection. So they need to be taken back to the lab very quickly after being collected from a ship, and then depending on the type of bacteria that's analyzed, the results come back in a day or more.
So they have to, some of the samples are time sensitive and they have to get to the lab?
Very time sensitive, that's correct, yep.
And of course the labs down there of SGS were built not too long ago. Do you have to deal with the pandemic when building these labs?
Yep, Fernando and I were working on this with our colleagues during the pandemic to build the new marine lab, and like everywhere else, it was really hard to get some items, and they were delayed, and we definitely had some tense calls with suppliers who were doing their very best to provide the equipment and supplies that we needed. I don't know if you remember that, Fer, but in the end, the lab was set up, and our first job was on a ship on Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday. You had people to go there on Easter Sunday?
Yeah, it went smoothly. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Good for you. Yeah, the ships never stop, do they? I mean, it's kind of like a moving target, right? You have to get them when you can, even on holidays, yeah. So how is sampling fuel different from environmental samples?
Well, the main difference is found in the sampling equipment required to take the samples and the care what we have to take for prevent contamination and preserve the integrity of the samples. For fuel oil samples, great number of instruments are used, but it's a less care with prevent a contamination or a fail in the integrity of the samples. Different with water. With water, we take a lot of cares. We use special equipment and sterile bottles to prevent the add of batteries, of something, other things, but can affect the results.
And what's the turnaround time on these?
Okay, it's different. For fuels, we have only hours. Okay. Yes, it's a very quick process. We only have hours for turnaround.
In other words, because the ship has to have the results before gets loaded on board. Is that why?
When they require a test for fuels, they need the results before they pass through the Panama Canal. Okay. So unless we have 8 hours to 12 hours maximum, we will complete the fuel slate and report to the client.
How are consumers in Latin America concerned about sustainability? Alexis, maybe you have some kind of feeling about that?
Yes, in Latin America, according to the OECD study, on average, 68% of citizens recognize climate change as a very serious threat to their countries. That in the next 20 years will have serious consequences. The presence of for environmental responsible products has led customers to demand more information to evaluate the sustainability of the global supply chain and the products they buy, as well as their raw materials used, the conditions in which they were produced, and the logistics of operations to move products along the entire supply chain. Likewise, smart supply management, considering carbon emissions along with price and delivery time as selection criteria, is becoming a decisive competitive advantage for companies.
Well, that's a great answer. Maybe Lisa and Fernando have an answer here as well.
Climate change is a reality, and yes, yeah, we're aware of this. A current example is the consequence of the El Nino phenomenon that has affected the transit of ships through the Panama Canal, reaching a reduced number of maximums 28 ships per day for transit, mainly due the low volumes of rains in areas of the Panama Canal. One of the objectives of the SES Strategic Plan 2023-2026 is reduce our carbon footprints as much as possible. Developing plans to use renewable energies in our office. An example is the installation of solar panels in our LPG laboratory located in the Atlantic sites, and a project for the installation of 64 new solar panels in our hydrocarbon laboratory located in Pacific sites.
How does the logistics of moving goods fit into the picture?
This has meant that not only governments or multinational companies are looking to reduce their carbon footprint, but it's something that logistic integrators can offer to their customers as an added value. For example, in 2020, the logistics sector contributed for 11% to global emissions. With increasing customer demand, pressure from regulators and investors, a new green supply chain allows sustainable logistics in a must for business.
So what is Maersk doing to decarbonize shipping, Alexis?
Yes, good question. Actually, we are recently received the first methanol vessel, and currently we have ordered 25 container vessels with dual fuel engines on order that will be able to operate on green methanol as well as low sulfur fuel. The first one delivered this year and carried more than 2,000 20-foot long containers is the world's first container vessel propelled by methanol. An additional 25 dual vessels are on order ranging for 2,000 TEUs container capacity to 16 TEUs, 1,000 TEUs capacity. Looking to the future, but 25% of Maersk's container volume will be transported using green fuels by 2030. A full fleet of green fuel powered vessels will be delivered and operational by 2027.
The distribution of green fuels such as green methanol, what's the situation on distribution throughout the world? Is this hard to get for ships at many ports, or is it easy to get, or are they building terminals for this?
Yes, this is the like chicken and egg dilemma. You know that is who come first.
Yeah.
We choose, and also we have the proof that we can do it. So now is the infrastructure, also all the supply chain is making change. We have other competitors are ordering also methanol vessels. So that proof that we need a change for all the supply chain of fuels, but also not only supply chain, but also bunker infrastructure, terminals that need to be arranged, but also the capacity to have the green methanol available will be necessary. But at least we have the proof that we can do it, and also that we will need that kind of fuel.
Right, yeah. I guess that will come with time as well. You know, if I had to sum up this conversation with one word, I think that one word would be hope. Hope for the future of clean oceans, air to breathe, clean harbors, clean lakes. Because here we have two major global companies that seem to be working towards a common goal. Maersk Shipping Lines, it's a leader of worldwide logistics for global transportation, basically one of the world's biggest carriers. Then on the other side, we have another global leader, SGS, which is ensuring that this is done in a fashion that supports sustainability, that supports our future path to decarbonization, that will result in a healthy future for the world. Of course, we also spoke about the Panama Canal, which I found to be very interesting, and the presence SGS has there to support this. So a big congratulations goes out to SGS on the construction of the new Marine Service laboratories in Panama as well. I'd like to thank our panelists, Mr. Fernando Young of SGS Panama, Mr. Alexis Rodriguez of Maersk Shipping Lines, and Dr. Lisa Drake of SGS North America. Check out SGS on the World Wide Web at www.sgs.com. Check out Maersk Shipping Lines on the World Wide Web at www.maersk.com. I'm Bob Goldring. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you again on the next podcast. Good day, everyone.